money customizing and saving with Liberty Mutual.
Hello, hello, hello. It's nice to see you guys, and our special guest is. I'm very, very excited to present him to you guys today. This is Michael Rosales.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. You know, we're here. We're here.
We're rocking it, man. I'm so
Day
excited.
by
I'm so glad that you were able to we were able to figure it out and get schedules all worked out where we can actually talk and oh man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How are you? How you dealing with all this
Oh, it's
time?
been crazy. You know, school is we're trying to start school next week and we're having all of our teacher meetings and learning how to clean stuff, and it's been nuts.
As
It's
if
been nuts.
teaching wasn't already hard enough.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh
Yeah.
man. How about you? How are things out on your way?
Everything is good. You know, it's just like a roller coaster. Every day is completely different. You know, at first it was like, oh, I have all this time off. I'm not traveling all summer. And it's kind of like, oh, it's fun. I'm getting into the TikToks and I'm doing. And then
Right.
now it's like, I don't know what today brings. I don't know what tomorrow brings. I don't know what yesterday was.
No,
But
nothing.
it's good. It keeps us all on our toes, right?
This is true. This is true. It definitely keeps us on our toes, keeps us thinking fast. Gotta change with the times. And
Yes.
actually, some good things have come of it. Like for our school in particular, we are now 1-to-1 with Chromebooks across our school. So, and we were so anti-technology. I mean, this whole school was so backwards and anti-technology. It was just pathetic. And now we're actually kind of catching up with the times a little bit. So that's been kind of a good thing to come of all of this.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So every kid is provided a Chromebook
Yep.
now.
Every
That's
kid in our
so
school has a
great.
Chromebook.
Okay.
It's fantastic. I mean, I teach at the high school level, so it's not like kindergartners are taking a Chromebook home, but
Right, right. Yeah, but still, that's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah, it's
Okay.
excellent. So I'm so glad you're here. So I've known about you for a long time. I'm kind of fangirling a little. I don't know if you can tell I'm kind of
Oh,
nervous.
no, don't be.
So for any of our followers who might not know if they've been living under a rock, Michael Rosales is choreographer for Santa Clara Vanguard of all of I mean, and you're choreographers for so many awesome places, but that's just the thing that sticks in my mind so much because I marched Blue Stars.
Mm,
And so I've seen Santa Clara live several times over the years, first going to shows and then being at shows with them. And then, kind of as um, as a spectator later on, after I aged out. And it's just seeing the development of what drum corps has turned into. And I feel like Santa Clara and your work with them has led the way with that just in this amazing way.
oh, thank you. Thank you. I don't know if it's led the way, but I know it those performers are so inspiring, you know, to work with, and it pushes me to push creatively, like, you
Yeah,
know, like, so it's kind of like I don't want to just give them the same old stuff. These are not just the same old kids or
right.
performers, you know, they're not even kids, they're grown, you know, adults.
They're adults.
And it's like, okay, well, let's see what we can dig up and what we can pull together to create something different. So Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. I love choreographing for those performers just because, and I've had this discussion with a few people. I work with dancers also, like pre-professional dancers, and I work with bands and pageantry. I love working with people in our arts community because there's still that sense of respect. You know, our performers still know how to
Yes.
stand up straight. They know how to listen. They know how to say yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, or, you know what I'm saying? Just respect. There's still a level of respect in there that is, I think, is missing now in a lot of places, especially like in the dance community. So I love coming back.
That's so exciting. It's so nice to know that like what we're doing is so positive for these kids and these young adults that we're teaching as we go. And like, so one of the things that you know, we kind of talked beforehand a little bit about what we were wanting to talk about for you guys, and you know, just the fact that we're not just teaching people how to make music. We're not just teaching people how to move and perform when we're in the marching arts community. We're teaching them so many different life skills. So what are some of the things that you're hoping that these kids, these young adults, I should say, get out of coming and being a part of any of your productions?
Oh my gosh, so many things, so many things. I know personally the things that I've walked away from being in this community is um, so much time, respect for time. Do you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of people in the professional world. I live in Miami. Everyone's in Miami time, you know, like
Yep.
respect for time, how to show up early, you know, not just on time, how to show up prepared, how when something is done, you need to be done, you know, deadlines need to be met. When you have to travel to places, knowing that you have to prepare yourself for that trip to make sure that everything goes smoothly. Traveling, you know what I'm saying? Little things like
Yeah.
traveling, know how to pack your, you know, your luggage and your suitcase and whatever you need, your
You mean I can't take my
essentials.
whole closet?
Right, you know what I'm saying? Like drum corps, you can only take a certain amount of things with you, right? And you have to
Yep.
make it work. Um, Working with people, learning how to work with different personalities. You know, there might be a day where this person next to you is not having a good day. And you learn to, because it's your teammate, you learn to kind of like navigate where you need to be for someone else. Because you're going to have days also where you're like, I'm not it, and knowing that people are there next to you going, well, I got you today is such an important life skill on an everyday. I meet and I work with people and I have to be aware of where they're at today, you know, so that
Right.
everything goes smoothly. Creatively, oh my gosh, I think life is art, right? So even though
Yes.
you're not an artist, you still have to be artistic. So say I am I don't know, a banker. You know what I'm saying? A banker, and I have to get my loans up.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be creative with how I want to present this to people. I have to be creative with how I talk and communicate and, you know, discuss this thing with people. How do I create marketing things that people get more attracted to what it is that I'm presenting? So even though, you know,
Yeah.
you're not an artist, if you're a lawyer, you know what I'm saying? You have to
Right.
artistically do things to get your point across.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I actually, you say that about a lawyer, and it kind of brings that scene from Chicago to mind where he's like tap dancing through his speech. And it's like, that's exactly what you're talking about, though, being creative
It's
in the
art.
way you
Yeah.
present yourself. That's so
Yes.
fantastic. Well, okay, this is kind of a little bit off the topic of that, but it kind of goes with it is how has being on TikTok and like seeing what people are doing on TikTok, has that at all changed your perspective and changed the way you look at the world? Because you've come from somewhere that's already a really creative place, and now it's this other type of creative place. Like, has that changed your perspective at all?
The only thing is like you see culturally where we are at. You know, you see culturally
Okay.
that, you know, we have a span of 60 seconds to or 15, 20 seconds to engage me and then I'm gonna walk away. And
Mm-hmm.
so like it's taught me to kind of look at where our society is, where our youth is, and what is going to hold their attention. I think that's so important. You know, we can't get stuck in
Yes.
our own ways. We have to like listen to our students, our kids. Pop culture is so important, so important. Even though like I work with West Broward High School, and so with those kids, I have to listen
Them.
to, okay, what are they dancing to? What I'll play different types of music, and I'll kind of take note on what excites them, and then I'll work off of
Okay.
that. So I think TikTok's the same thing. I had to kind of go in there, study a little bit, notice what is attracting the youth, and try to kind of stay in there with them somehow. I don't know if I'm doing it, but
I think you're doing a great job of it personally.
oh, thank you.
Oh.
Thank you. I mean, you're kind of a master at it.
Well, you
So,
say that, but I've kind of took it as the business approach of like there's views out there and there's so many people watching that if you just do it over and over and over and you do it enough, the views are going to come, you know? And so I'm like, I'm one of those crazy people who's out there posting like 8 times a day. And I feel like that's kind of where I drew it in. And then we got really lucky. We had one video that went crazy, got like 23 million views. And, you know, with that sort of thing, it's like, I don't consider myself any sort of TikTok master or anything. I just played the game basically until we hit
right.
a lucky strike. And
So it becomes a little bit of a, like a numbers game and just
yep,
put content out there.
exactly,
I got
exactly.
to work on
And
that.
I, well, and that's kind of what I took. Well, I don't know if you ever watched the Guard Instructor Reacts videos, but
Yes.
that's like my idea with that is like, well, I've kind of put myself in this position now. Now I want to help lift other people up and help them get the views and help them, you know, find successes. And so that's like with watching the videos. I'm like, I'm here watching the videos anyways. I might as well, you know, share it with everybody else in some way. So it's
Absolutely,
really fun.
absolutely. Well,
I have a
and
lot of fun on TikTok.
I love that you're doing that because it's also a way for kids to be on a spotlight. Do you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like things have been taken away, you know, starting with WGI and
Yes,
drum corps and marching band, it's been taken away. And so any little thing we can do to put these kids in a spotlight and make sure that, hey, you deserve to be seen. You deserve to be watched,
absolutely.
I think is so important. So I'm so glad that you're doing that.
So is this kind of the mindset I wonder that you had when you were starting to think about the breakdown camp, which I know it ended up being something different than what you originally intended, right?
Yeah. The breakdown camp initially was I've always wanted to do a movement-based camp, whether it
Hmm.
was for color guard or you know or for band. But I we just saw an urgency in reaching out to the band kids and giving them tools and proper fundamentals in movement, and not only the students but also the assistant directors and the band directors
Oh
that are
yeah.
sitting there going, Michael, I don't even know how to teach a plie. So
Yep.
you know, like being able to create a platform where, hey, let's walk these directors through this, let's help them out, and then let's do the same thing for the kids, so that we can all grow together. Because it can be so dangerous. It can be so dangerous
It's true.
if you don't have the proper technique. So that became about, and we were so excited, and we're still so excited about it. And we were going to launch it this summer, and then this whole thing happened. So we're like, okay, maybe not yet. And so that's when we kind of started going to virtual stuff. And then when it was like virtual, it was like, well, we don't have to stop at just band now. You know, we can
Right?
go ahead and reach out to as many people as we can because literally it's it's a computer screen. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's evolved a lot
That's so awesome.
in
And
a few
honestly,
months.
watching your ability to like change it and make it fit and then make the platform work for you, that inspired me so much because you know when we had our season uh canceled, we were absolutely devastated. And it's like you were saying, you know, you travel all summer. That's the same thing, like I do that and have our staff and everything, and we go all summer long, and all of a sudden now we have to sit at home. What are we going to do? And you know, honestly, it was watching the breakdown camp and watching the breakdown camp kind of transform, and I was like, you know what, I think we could potentially do something for our followers like this. And we created our virtual camp off of that. And so that was just, it was so great to be able to, I guess, have an example to look up to with that. And my hope is that other directors are going to see what you're doing and they're going to realize they can apply it to their programs too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Or find ways, find ways because people are listening, people are watching and they need stuff to do. And so it's kind of our job, our duties as educators to keep giving them stuff, keep giving them material, keep giving them information. And then for me, I mean, I've been in this business for a long time and I've worked with so many different amazing groups that I've been surrounded by so much amazing talent that, hey, like let me get my friends on this thing because people
Yeah.
deserve to see you, you know what I'm saying? And you deserve to go. And so it was just kind of like a whole back and forth play on like you need to be seen and they need to see you, like, and you need to
Yeah,
watch this person kind of thing. So
exactly.
it's been great.
Exactly. Just connecting those dots is so awesome. And it's funny, like you say about us being the educators here, like a lot of times color guard instructors especially are not seen in that light. And we really are. We're educating these kids. I did that video a few days ago about the whole like competition versus education aspect. We are educators. We're teaching these kids and we are putting them in these situations where they have to take what we've learned and use that. And they usually have to use it in a very fairly quick manner, and there's a lot of high pressure. There's a lot at stake because we're competing. So they have to learn
Right.
so fast, and that it's great that we really need to be that way, and we need to start thinking of ourselves that way. I think before, not letting it get out of hand. Like, oh yeah, that's just the color guard instructor. Like, no, that's an educator who's working with your children.
Yeah, and a lot of these color guard directors that I know, or techs even, are
Mhm.
they get so into the students, like they know about the students, good days and bad days, and if they're
Yes.
having problems at home. So it's way more. It's way more than the job of a color guard educator and director is way more than just a gawk block.
So would you say that you uh, are somebody who, like, do you still get to connect with your kids as you're going around, because you work with so many different groups? Do you feel like you still get to have that good connection with your students?
It's a little harder these days because I feel like sometimes I'm like pulled into so many different directions. Um, but sometimes it's as easy as sitting down with someone on a lunch break. Like I don't ha
Yeah.
I miss those days where you really get to know them and you grow with them through the whole season. I miss that, but I get my fill by sometimes sitting down with someone during lunch or, like during a block, just kind of like really talking to them. So that kind of fills me in a sense that when I watch them on the field, I get to know who they are, and that's so great to still watch. But so it is different, but I try my best to stay connected to the
That's
performers.
That's so awesome, because so many times, like, you imagine like people working their way through their career, and you hear so many stories about people. Oh yeah, they got big and they went and started working for drum corps and they just kind of lost touch with everybody else and where they came from. And it's so awesome to be able to see somebody set an example of not doing that, and keeping that connection and actually caring about the kids that you work with. And I think that's
Uh,
the difference between an educator and just somebody who just comes in and works with you.
and
So
you
that's
there
awesome.
and there will be, there's also two types of choreographers.
Mhm.
There's a lot of choreo, and then this happens also in the dance community. I'm not just saying for our community. There's a lot of choreographers that have so much art in them that it needs to get out. And so they are teaching based off of the art that's in their heart, in their heads, in their bodies that needs to get out. I feel like I'm a choreographer that I want to see the kids and I want to see what they can do and I want to see what they are able to do. And so working especially with with drum corps and color guards, I mean I trained in everything from ballet to hip hop to all the Latin dances and contemporary. And so for me to choreograph on a musician's body, I mean, their range is so limited. And so I'm not going to be like,
Yeah.
well, I see this in this song, and I'm going to do this. You know, I have to like
Yeah.
step way back and be like, okay, their bodies are here. This is where their technique is. This is where their performance is. And so I choreograph based off of what I think will look great on them. Or even a color guard, you know. I mean, I work
Yeah.
with Paramount too. And so seeing those kids are so mature, I have way more range,
Yeah.
but I still have to go, okay, what's going to look good on them? So,
Right.
so there's a difference there in choreographers and how they deal with the talent.
Okay. And honestly, that's a great way to to look at it. I've not like thought about it that way before too. Like, are we actually choreographing for what the kids can do versus are we choreographing what we want to create? And I think that's something a lot of really young color guard instructors especially need to develop an understanding of. I've seen a lot of kids who come fresh off of drum corps and they go back and work with their high school right away, and they don't understand why they can't get their students doing the things that they did when they were
Right.
drum corps. Like we had 150 people doing it all summer. Why can't we get our little band of 60 kids here in Podunk, rural Missouri, to do
Mm,
this? And
yeah,
I think that's that understanding that comes with the maturity of having taught for a while. It's so good for them
yeah.
to be able
And
to be
finding that
flexible.
balance, finding a
Hmm.
balance of like, okay, this is a part where this can have a little bit of my personality in it. You know, like the
Yeah,
older, the more mature your students get, then the bigger window you have to go, well, I want to say something here and here and here, kind of thing. Yeah.
that's so awesome. Being able to say something as a choreographer, it's so awesome. So we have some questions from our viewers. We have a few that were sent in before and a few that were sent in since we started. And I really liked this idea because we have an issue with this too. Uh, what are some positive ways to foster a sense of size inclusivity in both dance and color guard? So if you're working with these groups, and I know you're not necessarily recruiting for these groups, but how can you go about making sure people understand that it's all inclusive, no matter your physical condition or shape or what have you, that we can actually, do this sort of thing. And I think that kind of goes along with what we're talking about, meeting them where they're at.
Right, right. I think it's not so much about like the size. I think it's whether or not you can do what is being asked to do. Do you know what I'm saying? Um,
Yeah.
like, cause I mean, also I worked with University of Miami. I coached their dance line for 8 years, you know, and it was one of those that I want. I mean, it's Miami, you know, like the girls are curvy, but there's so much energy and spunky and great
Yep.
technique. So there's no way I'm gonna sit there and be like, you can't be in this because you don't
Mm-hmm.
fit a certain look. You know, we had to be very careful and make sure that at the end of the day, are you going to look amazing doing what we're asking you to do? And so whatever that is for the member, you know, what do you have to do when you go and audition for a place or something to make sure that you are equipped to be able to do the physical things that's being asked of you to do? And I think for directors, color guard and dance directors, I think we have to foster like, hey, I just need you to be healthy and safe with me, whatever that is. So obviously, this goes for everyone. You have to make sure you're training, you're physically fit, and you're eating properly, you know, and let the cards fall where they may, you know, at the end of the day. That's what it is. Because to me, the size doesn't matter until it stops you, you know, from doing what you have to do.
Yeah, honestly, that's such a great way to look at it, and being, you know, if they're healthy and they're able to achieve it, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Uh, so this one says, how do you motivate band members? And she came back and corrected it to say high school band members specifically to embrace movement and horn movement. So how do we
Mm,
get them to embrace it? Because I know a lot of, especially high school kids, are so awkward in their bodies.
yeah, yeah. My approach is to never start with technical stuff.
Okay.
Um, it should be a form of play. It should be a form of relating to music. And so I usually, when I first walk into a new program and, if they are not too familiar with movement, I just stand in front of them. I will play a piece of music. We'll jump around. We'll do jumping jacks. We'll do some, tai bo. We'll do some kicks and we'll move around and we'll wiggle and we'll drop and we'll reach and we'll down. And they don't know it, but they're doing movement.
Okay.
They're going to go look that way, lunge that way, a little further, a little further, a little further. Now crawl like a spider. Now they're doing floor work. Do you know what I'm saying? Now let's all get up. Let's all that way. Let's all jump over a pond. Boom. They're doing jumps. They're doing leaps. It's a form of it. And so letting them know that it's okay to move. It's okay to be silly and embrace it. And then from there you go, okay, we're going to stand up straight. We're going to bend our knees. This is called a plie, by the way. And slowly work them into that, because it's scary for a kid that's never moved before and that plays video games all day and plays their tuba and all that stuff. It can be super scary. But if you approach it with a sense of play and lightheartedness, and just be smart. I think we have to be smart as educators on how we want to present these things to these students. And so, yeah, little stuff like that. We play. And you know what? You don't know it, but you guys just did a pas de chat jump.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, because they're always capable of everything. And we throw some of that in, when we're teaching chasses or something. We're like, oh, we'll compare it to this skipping when you were a kid, or how did you do this? How did you do that? How did you play on the playground? But I think that's an awesome idea of actually playing with them, and actually and Ashley commented on here, play is a great way to dip the toes, and that's absolutely right.
Yeah, it's so fun because it's natural. And I talk to them about this. You guys, movement is the most natural thing you could possibly do. If you guys have a little brother, little sister, little cousin, and they're in the living room and they find a box, they're going to jump in this box and they're going to go, spaceship. And but that's what we do as actors and dancers and performers, is take on a role and run with it. But because your brother and sister is invested, I'm like, you're watching them because it's interesting. And so somewhere in there, society tells us, stand up straight, stop playing around, get serious. That we strip that away from these teenagers as they grow up. Well, I think it's just a matter of healing it mentally.
Healing it back over.
And letting them know, and nurturing them and letting them know it's okay to be silly and giggle. And then we stand up straight. And just knowing when to kind of flip-flop between those two mindsets.
Understanding that, I think, too, that goes back to talking about real life skills. These kids are going to be able to take that and understand in a social situation, okay, I can go and I can make jokes with this friend here at this point in time. But if we're in a faculty meeting, we can't do that. That's where we're doing the stand up straight.
Yes, absolutely. There's a time and place for everything. Work is work, play is play. And then when you can play at work, even better.
And that's why we absolutely love to do what we do. Exactly.
Yes. That's why I love the performance art.
Jess wants to know if you could go back and give yourself advice when you started guard and teaching, what would it be?
When I first started teaching, I had just finished marching a season with the Blue Devils, and I went to go teach, and it was terrible. I was terrible. And I wasn't sure what that was, and so I walked away from it. And I realized later on that I wasn't ready to teach. One, for me, and this is not going to go for everyone, for me, I wasn't ready to give back yet, because I hadn't learned all that I could possibly learn at the time. I was still in student mode, and I felt like I was still a sponge. And so what I was end up doing is I was just teaching I'm regurgitating what, my teachers were teaching me. versus finding your own voice as a teacher and saying, well, I learned this, and I learned this, but I want to take what I learned and I want to do this in a platter for my students. And so I think sometimes, and that also goes for choreography. You know, I think sometimes younger artists rush themselves into being a choreographer. Step back, keep learning, and you'll find a way. And then, of course, from there, it takes time to kind of develop your language and develop, you know, how you want to teach a certain skill or how to take your steps to get your kids to where you need to get them to get. But yeah, I think you have to take your time. What I would tell myself is keep studying. Yeah. There was a couple times where I jumped the gun because I was excited because I knew something. But yeah, keep studying, keep learning, and then it naturally happens. It'll naturally happen.
Do you ever run across students who remind you of that quality in yourself when you were younger? Like they really are chomping at the bit to be instructors and be choreographers, but they still just haven't quite reached that yet?
Yes, I see it all the time, And I stop them. I say, you should be dancing, you know, or you should still be performing. I get you want to do this, but because you can choreograph when your body's done, you know what I'm saying? But when I see a student that is still like in sponge mode, I tell them, I was like, I don't think you should be teaching yet. I mean, I get it. It might be good extra income for you, but ultimately you should still be learning.
Well, and they can make their main focus their own learning and their performing and start teaching on the side. You know, like a lot of times kids go back to their small town high schools or whatever, and they think that has to be the be all end all, and they can't perform anymore because now they're a teacher. And my hope would be that they would understand that you can develop both also.
Work your way there. Yeah. I think sometimes they get put into a situation where they moved out of home, and so they need to pay rent and pay bills and all that stuff. And so they gotta get thrown into, well, I gotta teach 4 high schools to be able to kind of afford that, which, you know what, that sucks. But it's the same thing. That's the same thing that every dancer has to deal with. Right. You know, if you're a dancer and you want to do this professionally, you're going to move to LA or New York in a big city, and you have to figure out how to make a living, but still keep training and auditioning for things. So
that's one of the things whenever we go up to the Macy's parade for Thanksgiving, I love taking those kids around, and we always go to some sort of Broadway performance or somewhere where they get to interact with Broadway performers. And one of my favorite places is Ellen's Stardust Diner, where there's like Broadway performers there, and they always talk about how, well, we use all of our tip money to take classes. And the kids, it just blows their minds, these high school students, because they're like, wait a minute, you're a Broadway performer in New York City and you're working at Ellen's Stardust Diner. Why would you still need to go take classes? And they don't really understand that even beyond high school, beyond college, like there's still so much to learn that you need to keep learning and keep educating yourself and practicing.
Absolutely. Like what is your peak? You know what I'm saying? There is no such thing. You know, even my age, I will stop and I take a class, especially virtually now. If I see a choreographer, an artist that I know is teaching a class, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm jumping into this. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to. I think that whole student mentality, like I was talking about earlier, I was like, you just have to be in that mode that you got to still keep learning as time goes. Otherwise, you'll hit a wall, and then what happens?
And that's what your good teachers do, it seems like, is that they're the ones that are going to the professional development, and they're the ones that are taking classes and doing all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's important.
Cody J. Bear wants to know, how do you deal with unmotivated high school students? How do you instill passion in them?
I think talking to them is important. I had this conversation, actually we had a conversation like this on the breakdown where we had directors and Laura and Casey were on the call. You know, how to deal with students like who you don't feel like are motivated. I think talking to
Hmm.
them is important because it might not even be about them not being passionate. Maybe something's going on at home. You know, maybe something's going on in school that is causing them to like have this wall. I think it's important to sit down with them. And again, you like you were saying, it's our responsibility. We're not just educators teaching, you know,
Right.
checkpoints. We have to dig in there and reach into them and see what is going on. Uh, the other thing is, this goes back into make sure that you're teaching for the kids and not teaching for yourself. You know, so when I go to a school, I will play a bunch of different songs to see what gets them excited, because that's how you start to kind of learn about them. And so if they are kids that are really, I don't know, like very book smart and very straight edged, and you
Hmm.
start to do Nicki Minaj on them, they're
Ooh.
probably not going to relate, right? So again, it's just a little thing of like, let me find a way how I can, as their educator, as their coach, as a director, find a way where I can excite them in that sense.
So you're saying I can't just walk in and say, "Okay, everybody, we're dancing to Britney Spears now."
Right. Or or we're doing Kronos Quartet.
Yes.
You know, you would never like
Yeah.
to, you know, to a skit, you know, kids like in, you know, in a more urban city. Like you have to kind of listen to what their likes are.
So, and just understanding where they're coming from. Um,
Culturally, yeah.
um, Casey, I'm assuming that you may know Casey says, "Who is your favorite person and why is it me?"
Casey Thompson. She was actually
Oh
the one that was
goodness.
doing the saber technique at the breakdown
Oh,
camp.
okay, okay.
Yeah, we
Okay.
were roommates
So,
when we were on tour on Blast.
oh my goodness. Oh, that and
Yeah,
yes, you're in
yeah.
Blast. I mean, your resume is just so incredible. I love it so much because
Oh,
Blast is actually why I got involved in color guard like years and years ago in the
really?
first place. Yeah, I saw the PBS VHS tape.
Yeah,
Um, I was in choir and my choir instructor was also the color guard instructor, so she was trying to recruit kids for color guard. And my
yeah.
friend Anna was in color guard, and she's like, "Yeah, you should do it. You should do it." And of course, our choir instructor showed us Blast, and I fell in love with the color wheel. So it was just
Mm,
this whole thing, like, oh, that's why I want to do this. Is this? It's just so beautiful. I love it. We
it,
we got to see it live, and it
you
was
did.
fantastic. Yes.
Oh, yeah. It's a great show. I think that show has done so much for so many people in our
Yes.
field, you know, just to be able to kind of give them a platform to do a US tour and a Japan tour and
Yeah.
tour the, you know, Europe and do Disney's, both Disney's, you know, it's kind of just
Yeah.
such a great opportunity for so many people. And the people who originally created it, you know, Jim Moore and John Vanderkopf, I mean, brilliant minds that put this amazing platform and vehicle together. So I hope everyone who does color guard sees it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I sometimes I pull it out and show it to my students and it I forget how long ago it was that I originally had seen it. And so these kids that haven't seen it, they're like, "Oh, that's really cool." I'm like, "Oh yeah, it is cool. That's why I started doing what I do." And
Yeah.
it's so good. It's so are you involved with them anymore in any way or have you been involved?
Um, yeah, the past few years, I've helped choreograph and
Okay.
produced a show. So it's been fun. It's been touring in Japan the past few years. Last year we were on tour. This year we were taking the summer off because the Olympics was supposed to be happening in Japan.
Right.
So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully in the future we'll come back to it.
Yeah. Oh man. And if you guys come through again, I'm there. I'm ready.
Oh my gosh, right? I wish.
Yes. I love it. I love it so much. So going from there, what's a guard memory that you hold close and is most memorable to you?
Oh my goodness, so many, so many. Some of my best friends were in guard. Um, Gosh, how do you even choose? How do you even
Yeah.
choose? Um, One of the moments that I think stand out in my head growing up was when I was marching. I'm gonna date myself, girl. Marching Blue Devils Winter Guard,
Okay.
'98, and the first time we had Stanley Kanab come in and do dance class. I don't know if you know Stanley, but he's a legend in the activity. He's changed it so much, and how he's incorporated movement into the activity was just, he was like a god. And
Yeah,
so
he's amazing.
having that weekend to work with him and learn from him, I was just so in awe the whole weekend of, you know, his personality and how he was and the things he would say and how he talked about technique. So yes, that's definitely at the top of the list.
Oh, that's awesome. I think a lot of students are going to have something similar to that too, especially with like an instructor that changed them. And I think he did so much. I That's one of the things about color guard in the 90s. I just When we do our history night, we do history night as part of our camp, and we go back to that color guard in the 90s, and Stanley Knob comes up, and we talk about all of these sort of things, and it's just, he's such a great thing for the color guard and for the winter guard, for our whole community and all the performances, and he's fantastic.
Yeah. Takes, you know, to see someone take so many risks and stand by it and, you know, be so strong. It's great.
So how do you keep things interesting with a small range of movement skills? So I'm assuming this is kind of like looking at what you're doing with the breakdown camp with the performers, the musicians.
Uh-huh. Um, Sense of play. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how does a kid keep their day interesting? They're not doing any major leaps or any crazy turns, you know, but I think there's always a shape that's always interesting that you can kind of incorporate into this, whether how you move, um, the different textures you can create, different levels to create, and then add on the layer of acting and play in there. I think its possibilities are endless if you really dig into it.
So basically, like kind of moving away from the technique, basically, is what you're saying with them, and don't think of them as dancers. Just think of them as movers and
Movers,
visual visual
storytellers.
parts, storytellers. Fantastic.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. And learning shapes. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to. The other, a couple months ago, maybe, Andy Toth did a breakdown of Ronald Reagan's ballad. And he pretty much talked about how the whole ballad had four sets and they moved the whole time. And the whole, as much movement as they did, there wasn't really anything that technical or hard about what they were doing. It was just orchestrated so smart, and the kids were totally into it and they bought into it. Then that you had a whole beautiful ballad with not asking them to do too many things technically. So smart
That's
writing.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
like you don't want to put too much in there for sometimes for those high school kids, like that ballad needs to be their break from whatever they were doing. If they're doing a lot of crazy drill to start out, or they're ending with a lot of crazy drill, like, and that's such a good idea, is to kind of change it up but still keep it interesting.
Right. And that's an opportunity
Fantastic.
for them to take over the show, you know? I love being
Yeah.
able to go, all right, I'm handing this over to you. You got to show me what you got, and then walk away and let them kind of like
Yeah.
create. So yeah, give them that opportunity to create the show.
Andy G made a comment here. I feel like I want to flip back to when we were talking about instructors that made an impact. He says, that was you for me, Michael. I remember you from BIW auditions in 2007, the year
Oh
before I
my
joined the
God.
Hurricanettes.
Oh, Andy, yes, she was one of the dance team, the dancers at that I had.
That's so awesome. Oh, I love when former students come back and kind of show you that love, and you're like, okay, whew, I did something good with them. Awesome.
I know. It just makes me so proud to kind of see where, you know, all these kids are at now. What's so funny is actually tomorrow we have an alumni call with the West Broward alumni
Oh,
from when we first opened the school, you know, and some of
okay.
them are like lawyers and doctors now, and they're like, hey, could we do happy hour? I'm like, cocktails. I'm like this. Wait, you guys drink? It's just so.
Yeah.
They're like, Michael, we graduated 8 years ago. Like,
Uh-huh.
okay, yeah, it's funny.
Like we finished law school now. We're all good.
Yeah, we can drink.
Yeah, I remember when my first student turned 21 and I was like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Ashley wants to know, what is your vision for the breakdown camp? So where do you want to go with this?
I'm open to wherever, you know what I'm saying? Ultimately, I want to keep sharing and spreading movement, you know, and I want to kind of keep giving the marching arts world as many tools as they can, because I know right now it's not as normal.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like we are saying, like for band directors to be teaching it, and for all these kids to just naturally walk into a school and start moving. So I want to be able to kind of keep offering those tools. And we've also been seeing, I know last spring when we were auditioning for the drum corps for Santa Clara, we
Mm-hmm.
saw a lot of really strong musicians come into audition with amazing chops. And then the movement portion, it's kind of like, you can tell that they come from a program that didn't have much of this. And it
Mm-hmm.
sucks. And it's really sad
Yeah.
because they're so talented, but it's not their fault that they weren't introduced and shown how to do a sit roll, or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
what plies and tendus are. And so spreading movement out there to as
Mm-hmm.
many of these programs as possible, just to make sure that they are all safe and they all have the proper information to be able to teach it to their kids is so
Yeah.
important. I would ultimately, we would like to tour it, you know, and go to different cities
Mm-hmm.
and reach to as many people as possible. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That honestly, so when you're doing drum now, okay, I'm it's been a minute since I marched drum corps myself.
Okay.
And of course I've always been color guard, so dance is always a portion of your audition, as far back as I know of. Um, but so when you're doing drum corps, because I get questions like this all the time, what are you looking for movement wise from your musicians and your drummers, your horn players and your drummers, that in the audition process that would be above and beyond what you normally would look for their playing skills and their marching skills?
Mhm. I think I'm sure every drum corps is a little different, but I think in
Mm-hmm.
general, you would want to see them under, like, that they understand lines, you know, that they know
Okay.
how to kind of lunge and shift their weights. I think that's a pretty basic way to kind of show, okay, they understand their bodies. Awareness of spine and release of their weight. I think it's a good place. Understanding how to plies work, because everything you're doing is working
Right.
off of plie, obviously, right? And of course, the willingness and openness to jump in there and do it. You know, so if I see a trumpet player that is just going for the jump, even if it's not exactly the jump that, you know, we need to be doing right now, or it's his leg is off, but he's committed to it, we can fix the lines. We can fix the lines. But did he jump? You know,
Mm-hmm.
versus the student that's kind of like is really timid about it. Then I'm not sure how to work with that body, especially if we have a
Yeah.
short amount of time in audition to kind of get to know them.
Right.
Just show me that you're willing to do anything. And I think that's a great place to start.
Awesome. That's uh so good. So we have another question about the breakdown camp here. So what gave you the idea to start the breakdown camp? Was it hard to gather the minds? We kind of already talked about like where it was coming from, but basically kind of what were some of the steps that you did in starting the creation of this camp?
The original camp is supposed to be, you know, a whole intensive, pretty much a
Mm-hmm.
3, 4 day, all movement camp. And again, it's just making sure that as many kids learn fundamentals of movement. And it started with just musicians. And so that was the original idea of the breakdown camp. And at the same time, taking instructors and giving them the tools so that they can take their kids and go on their own journey safely
Yeah.
together, kind of thing. But
What,
yeah, I
so
mean, I feel like
yeah.
like we were saying earlier, I have so many amazing instructors in my phone, you know,
Yeah.
educators and designers, and hopefully I can hopefully use this a platform like this to kind of bring everyone together in a non-competitive, no groups
Right.
kind of way. It's all like educational.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's actually something when the breakdown camp first started posting, and you guys created the Instagram account like back in the spring and what have you. They I had some people who were messaging me and they were like, "Oh, aren't you worried? Aren't you worried this is going to be competition?" And I was like, "That's not what it's about here. Like it's about education. He's going to be, teaching people this much needed skill. We're covering our area and what we can do with what we know, and I'm not out there teaching drummers how to, stand on their heads with their bass drums or anything like that. So that's something that, and it's all helping each other. So we're only going to be making ourselves better if we're helping each other to get better. And I think that is something that has been developing very slowly in the marching arts community. We were
Yeah.
born on this competition, and you probably actually understand that part and feel it even more than I realize, of how we were born of competition. DCI,
Yeah.
WGI are the first organizations that came out, and they were about competition.
It's very
Do you
competitive. Yeah.
I was gonna say, do you feel like it's changed much at the higher levels? Like I feel like it's changed a lot for us at the lower levels, at like the regional classes and the A classes. But do you feel like it's changed like that for where the students you're working with?
I think it's always been like that. I think it's always been that whole competition has been what's driven a lot of the activity, which
Mm-hmm.
is not a bad thing because that competition, that intense competition, is what has given birth to some of the most amazing shows out there,
That's true.
because I've sat in these design meetings with some of the greatest minds, and they're driven with how are we going to outdo ourselves, not necessarily saying I'm
Right.
competing with that group. They're competing with themselves and what they did the year before. Of course they're going to take note of what else other people are doing and other groups are doing, but some of the greatest designers I've worked with, it's simply sitting in a room and going, how do we do better than we did last year, kind of thing. And it's
Yeah.
and that drive to be better than you were the year before is is healthy. I think it's healthy. But again, you have to be careful that that
Right.
is not completely all you're kind of talking to your kids about.
You
I
don't
think
want it to be all
competition,
consuming.
right? And I think there's a big difference between competing with yourself versus throwing focus on that group across the street. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? We're going to take them down. That's a completely different, I think that's the wrong version of competition.
Yeah. Yeah,
So be
and
careful.
that's that kind of that mentality of always beating yourself, always doing better than you did previously. And I think that's what I feel like is changing in our activity, is that, we're not so much about, oh, we're Phantom, we're gonna take down cavies or vice versa. Or it's more about like, okay, how am I gonna be the best person I can be to help my team be the best that they can be, and how far can we progress
Right.
with that, basically. So,
Right. And are your students happy? Are they
yeah,
healthy? Are they enjoying themselves?
yes,
Because you can only get so far if your students are not 100% well-rounded, physically,
yes,
emotionally, psychologically. So that the goal is that, I think. And luckily I've been blessed enough to work with so many groups that keep all of that in mind.
that's so awesome, Michael. It has been so good talking to you. We are almost
Yes.
at time. Well, I don't want it to
Yay.
end, but I know it
I
has to, and
know.
there's so much, so many more things.
We can do
But
this anytime you want to. You just let me know.
okay,
But thank you so much for having me. Like, I'm gonna go back a little bit on
yes,
what you're saying. You know what? What we're doing as a community online, I think is
yes,
so beautiful. You know, between what you guys are doing with, you know, Robert Jordan's doing and Irving and Andrew. I think it's all Heather, like it's so great to see everyone out there representing positive vibes towards our activity, and I am so honored to be part of, you know, what we do.
absolutely, absolutely. Oh, it's
Yes.
so great. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much. You take care. Be safe.
All right, bye. Good night,
Bye.
guys.
Good night.